And Monica, if you could enter the full screen presentation mode. And we'd like to just get started by having you all write into the chat where you're calling in from, and also maybe 1 or 2 words about what resilience means to you. What is your interpretation of resilience? So writing into the chat, where are you calling in from, and what does resilience mean to you? So Terry says she's calling in from Virginia, and it means an ability to bounce back. Yes, definitely. The inner courage and confidence to act with meaningful choices, Pamela. Yes, for sure. Heidi calling in from Portland. Fortitude, staying power. So really that steadiness. I love that. Allison calling from Virginia means strength to overcome obstacles. Rachel from Portland, getting back on your feet after a hard time. Really cool. Seattle, strength and making it through no matter what. Having that strong fortitude. I love that. Vince from Portland, to not fall apart, to simply just hold it together. That's so true, so true. Right. Well, just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Try to keep yourself on mute throughout the hour together. And if you do have any questions, please just put it into the chat and we'll field those as we go. And just to get us started here, I want to just introduce myself. So I'm Brittney Van Meter, and I work at Nike. And I do business strategy and operations for our workplace design function. But outside of Nike, I teach a program called Search Inside Yourself. And this Search Inside Yourself program was actually developed at Google, and it's a mindfulness and emotional intelligence program. And it's Google's #1 leadership development program. But in 2012, they decided to spin it off into its own nonprofit to be able to teach it at large across. As a part of that, there are approximately 250 certified teachers, and Monica and myself are 2 of those teachers. And we are bringing you basically a subset of information from the Search Inside Yourself program today, but really focused on resilience. So that is a little bit about me, and I'll let Monica introduce herself.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. My name is Monica Thakrar. I am a leadership trainer, coach, and change management consultant based in Washington, D.C. With Brittney, we got certified last year in Search Inside Yourself. And for me, it's just a beautiful way to be able to bring mindfulness and resilience to organizations. And we've been able to teach it at a few organizations in the private sector and the public sector. And as Brittney mentioned, we just thought there were so many useful pieces around this that were so relevant to what we're all going through today, that we thought we'd offer these free webinars. We had one last week and one for you today, just to help everybody stay grounded. And a lot of your definitions were spot on what we'll be sharing and talking about today. So let's get into just how do we start defining what world are we living in, right? This is a term coined by the military. It's called VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And we're even more so right now during this COVID time, right? Everything has just become even more complex and more uncertain. When are we going back? How long will we be staying at home? How will it be once we start re-entering into perhaps going back out into society, right? We just don't know all the answers. And we as leaders, people in organizations, people out in the world, we're trying to grapple with everything that's going on during these times. So the definition of resilience that we're working with here at Silly is an ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. Okay, so recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. And all of this is, you know, we're all facing that right now. How well are we able to adjust? We're now I'm on the East Coast. This is our 5th week in, right? And so now it feels a little bit more normal. I don't know about for you, but so we're in some new routines. I'm in new routines, new patterns, new ways of operating with people. Feels a little bit easier. And then I hear some people, they're really struggling still, right? It's either overload or with families at home and still balancing the two, or work has gotten more busy. So how do we adjust to or recover from these shifts that are happening for all of us? Now, we talk about it in 3 ways. The first step is really finding a sense of. Okay, so this is where we get ourselves grounded. We start balancing ourselves. We start finding ways to be able to not get blown by the wind everywhere, right? So finding that inner sense of peace and calm that we can always go back to, even though everything around us is constantly in a swirl right now. The second piece is emotional resilience. So how do we now think about our emotional state? We might be getting into stages of the 5 stages of grief. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talks a lot about the 5 stages that we go through during really big change times. And even in change, not just grief times, we talk about that sense of we're going through perhaps depression or bargaining or anger. How do we shift some of those emotions into finding something more positive? And then the third one is cognitive resilience. And this is where we start speaking to the idea of how do we shift our mental state, not just our emotions, but how do we look for the silver lining? How do we look for the opportunities? How do we look for what is good, what good is coming out of these situations? Because as I know to a lot of my colleagues and clients, there are some benefits, there are some positives, even if they're small things. What are the small things? Just right now, I'm noticing the flowers blooming. I don't always pay attention every spring, or the birds chirping, coming to my window that I might just not have noticed before. So even if they're small things, what are the positive ways that we can start shifting into this? So Brittney will get us started on the inner calm.
Yes. So basically, we're looking at what is the foundation by which we can build that inner calm. And really, it's this movement from autopilot into awareness. And so I'm going to talk you through actually what are the characteristics of autopilot? What does it mean to be on autopilot? And so next slide, please. So autopilot has some traits. And the first one is that your attention is in the past or the future. So particularly right now, we have a lot of future fear. What is my financial situation going to be? What is my health going to be? What is my health going to look like? Am I going to get sick? Is somebody in my family going to get sick? We have a lot of these future fears, a lot of projection onto the future in terms of what's going to happen. And this really brings us out of the present moment. We are caught up in that worry and that rumination. We're not actually present with what's happening right here, right now. And there's also this ability to become distracted. So right now we're very distracted by the news, or maybe even particularly distracted by addictive behaviors, like maybe we're eating too much, or we're on our phones too much because we have a lot of extra time and we don't really know how to fill that time or be present with ourselves and our emotions and what we're actually going through. So distraction is another autopilot trait. And then this idea of just being less aware, because when we are in this grappling with our attention in the past and the future, and we are distracted, and we have lots of things coming at us, it can be just a grounds for us to be less aware. And then the last one is acting based on habit patterns and assumptions. So oftentimes we have preconceived notions about how certain people, or even ourselves, how we should act or react in certain situations. And we might see people hoarding all the toilet paper and being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're doing that, and just very reactionary toward this behavior of others. But everybody's processing things in a different way, in a different means. And when we're on that autopilot mode, we're not really able to see the forest through the trees. We can't really be grounded within ourselves and develop that inner calm to be able to react in a way that's positive and constructive for us and for everyone around us. So next slide, please. There is fortunately another way to live. And this is a great quote from Viktor Frankl. He is a Holocaust survivor, and he wrote A Man's Search for Meaning. And so he basically survived, some of the deepest atrocities of the human race. And he said between stimulus and response, so what happens to you, what's coming at you, what's in your sphere, and your response, there's a space. And then in that space is our power to choose our response. And then in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So no matter what is coming at you, you can have a lot of things happening in your life, but there always is that space. There always is a little sacred space to stop, to develop that inner calm, and then to respond in a way that's going to benefit you and benefit all of those around you. And that's really your freedom. You can never control everything what's going to happen in life, unfortunately, although I myself would love to. But you can control how you're going to react. And that's a really special thing about being human and about having awareness. And that's something that we have to cultivate, though, because we don't always know that we have that space, and we don't always exercise that space in the most constructive way. And so the idea is, how do we get off autopilot? And I didn't mention this, but neuroscientist Justin Brewer, he found out through a series of scientific studies of the brain that we spend about 50% of our time on autopilot. So if you think about it in terms of your life, if you live to be 60, you will have spent about 20 years in the present moment, right? So the rest of the time you're just on autopilot. You don't really know what's going on. You're just getting from one place to another, and it's all kind of a blur. So it's really beneficial that we continue to cultivate this in our life, and that we recognize that waking up to our life is really actually important, because we don't want to miss it. You know, we don't want to miss the special moments of our life. So how do we get off? And really what we're advocating here is mindfulness practice. And there's a lot of definitions out there about mindfulness, but really you can think of it as just being present. It's waking up to the life that is happening right here. And it might not be good and it might not be bad, but it's real and it's happening now. And it's an experience that we're having in the present moment. And when we are able to cultivate that presence and be in the present moment, we really are creating the grounds by which fear can't really live in that moment. When you're fully present with nature, with yourself, with your family, it's really difficult to also be fearful in that moment, or be angry, or be reactive, because you're fully present. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about mindfulness. And a lot of times mindfulness, you can think, oh my gosh, well, it's such a devoted practice. You know, I have to really be devoted to this practice, but really it isn't like that. And you can practice mindfulness practice very easy in stealth mode. Nobody has to know you're even doing it. And this is a micro practice that you can use at any time of day that will serve you. And it is a mindfulness practice. And so it's 3 breaths practice, and I'll just demonstrate it. So the first breath, you bring attention to the breath and the quality of the breath, where you feel the breath the most in the body. And then the second breath in, you relax the body and relax the shoulders, relax the jaw, let the belly be soft. Oftentimes we are habitually tensing up against life in this kind of worrying position. So just relaxing the body with the second breath. And then the third breath in, asking yourself what's really important now, and not really searching deeply for an answer or trying to theorize what you should say, just whatever pops up. What's important now? What's really important now? Okay, so let's practice this together. All right, first breath in, bringing attention to the breath, the quality of the breath, the temperature of the breath. The second breath in, relaxing the body, relaxing the chest, dropping the shoulders, the jaw, the belly. And the third breath in, asking yourself, what's important now? What's really important right now in this moment? All right. So this is a very easy way to reconnect with yourself, to develop that inner calm that Monica talked about, which is really the beginning of developing your resilience. So use this practice. Set an alarm on your phone, start using this practice regularly, so that you can get off that autopilot and regain the attention in the present moment to develop that inner calm and to develop your resilience.
Okay, so the next topic we want to talk about is the emotional resilience. So often, we're feeling things, we think we're in reaction. And as Brittney mentioned, our body starts reacting. We get tense, we get, all of these emotions come from external factors or internal thoughts and emotions that might be going on for us. And yet they're physiological responses to something going on externally or internally, right? Something happening to us in our body. We're seeing all of these expressions at any given moment could be popping up. It could be I'm reacting to the big situations around us, or it could just be, you know what, I'm hangry and I just really need to get a snack so that I can keep participating in the next 3 or 4 Zoom calls I have this afternoon, right? So it's just cultivating that awareness of what's going on in our body and then being able to see what can we do about it. So just to let you know, there's been some science studies around this, and they started testing people out. They did a survey with 700 people back in 2013, and they just started seeing different physiological responses and what was getting activated in the body. And you see with the red and the orange and the yellow, there was more activation of that emotion in that particular body than the blue or the dark colors that you're seeing in this heat map. They're calling it heat map. And in these heat maps, you can see that anger or love or pride actually really activate the emotions in people's bodies. And things like depression or sadness, right? The emotions aren't getting as activated. So let's just test this out right now. Just to bring to mind a situation where you felt really frustrated or angry, really, really angry at somebody. And just allow yourself to drop in your body. Where are you feeling that? Where is that emotion manifesting in your body? I know for me, it shows up in my throat. It's like my whole throat gets constricted. And you can see in this top left corner of anger, right? The whole top of the body, things are just lighting up at the top of the body. And now just imagine just a feeling of peace, happiness, or even love. Somebody that you just really, really love. And where is that showing up in your body? What does that feel like in your body? I know for me, it's just my heart just gets wide and open. I'm thinking of family members or, my father or niece and nephews, and just my whole body just opens up. Okay, and so you can see the studies just physiologically, it's impacting us, all of those emotions. And so we have the ability to kind of sense of what things are happening, what's happening in all of our bodies, and sense of we're not the emotions. We actually have the ability to know that the emotions are around us, or we're reactions. They're showing up in our body, but we are not those emotions. So you'll see that even in the brain, different sorts of parts of the brain light up. You'll see the prefrontal cortex is that front part of our brain where it's really the decision-making part of the brain. And that's usually when we're in our logical, rational, that kind of mode in our brain. The amygdala, however, is the center that's often associated with the emotional response. So often we think about like if we're having a big emotion coming at us or feeling a large emotion like we're all going through right now during COVID, or for me, I know it's a lot of up and downs of emotions. The amygdala is often getting triggered. And what's happening in there is that we often get hijacked. Our emotions are hijacking what's going on. We're shifting out of the prefrontal cortex, which is allowing us to make logical, rational decisions about how we're doing things, and we're getting triggered. Okay, so just something to pay attention to with the science, the neuroscience here. There's a lot of support now talking about, how this is all working in the body and in the brain. And just to back this up, another study that happened in 1997, they did a gambling study. Anybody like to gamble? I know I'm playing more games now too that I'm at home. And so they gave people 4 decks, 2 decks of red cards, 2 decks of blue cards. And in the decks, they had to turn the cards over and put as many cards into the pot, but certain cards were going to win them money and certain cards weren't going to win them money. So they didn't know which cards they were. Okay, so people started doing the test. They started turning over the cards, and they started sensing that around 50 cards, they started having a hunch that the red cards were not getting them the money, right? It was really going to be the blue cards that were going to help them move in the direction of where they needed to go to win the pot. After 80 cards, they figured it out. They cognitively realized that in their brain that they really were only, the blue cards were the only ones that were going to really win the cards. Now, along the way, they did a polygraph, okay? And so they put sensors on the palms of their hands, and they started testing to see the stress response in the hands. And what they noticed was that after 10 cards, people's palms started to sweat, and the behavior started to change. And the science behind this is that physiologically, we're getting triggered much more quickly in our body than we are in our brain, or even having the cognitive response that we know exactly what's happening. So our body's giving us signals all the time. And so the emotional resilience is starting to pay more attention to the body, what's happening in the body system, so that we start seeing, wow, my shoulders are really stressed. And typically I might go and get a massage somewhere, but what can I do now during COVID? Because I know they're getting even more tense now than they normally would, or more quickly. Okay, so what can we do to shift those emotions that are showing up in our body? So to do that, we're gonna walk you through actually a little bit more of a dedicated practice. Brittney showed you a little micro practice that you can do in stealth. This one is a little bit more dedicated, meaning it takes maybe 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. And it's a way to actually sit and start getting an understanding of just noticing what's happening in your body, not even doing anything to relax the body, but just starting to get a sense of what's happening in the body. So for this, I'll talk you through a little bit of the posture as well, just to get you a sense of what it feels like to sit for a more dedicated practice, mindfulness practice. So if you want, you can get your feet flat on the floor. Also, you want to have your back straight as much as possible. You want it comfortably, but not too comfortably that you're going to fall asleep, right? So a little bit taut. And if I put my hands on my palms up on my lap, whatever's comfortable for you. And then if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes. If not, you can always just gaze 45 degrees down. And I want you to take a deep breath in and out. Take another deep breath in and out. Just bring attention to the top of your head. Allowing your mind to wander down the back of your head, down to the back of your neck, into your neck and shoulders. Just noticing what's going on, not necessarily trying to project any relaxation or anything. Noticing the front of your face, your jaw. Bringing your awareness to the back, upper back, mid back, lower back. Often we store stress and tension in our back, noticing if anything's there for you. Bringing your attention to your chest, abdomen, and your groin. Noticing your arms, your hands, and your fingers. Just noticing what's going on in your body and any emotions. Bringing your awareness down to your thighs and your calves. All the way down to your feet and your toes. And bringing attention to your whole body. Allowing yourself to just notice what's going on for you. Taking a deep breath in and out. One more deep breath in and out. Whenever you're ready, you can start coming back, noticing your fingers and your toes. And bringing your awareness back into our space together. So just seeing what came up for you, what manifested in your body. Just knowing your body will give you signals, and that's where we can understand what's happening for us, what emotions are coming up, and that's where we can build with the resilience in the emotional state. Okay.
And now we'll start to get into a little bit more about building resilience in the cognitive space. But before I start, I just want to say I have a 3-year-old in the background, so if you hear anything, that's him. It's interesting working from home. So this is a framework by Oxner and Gross. So they're 2 early emotional intelligence researchers, and you can see this axis here, trigger to time, and then underneath that is attention, reframing, and acceptance. So the idea here is that when you're triggered, that you bring that attention to it. So you begin to take those 3 deep breaths. You begin to stop. And that's the most important thing you can do at the onset of a trigger, is to stop. So common triggers right now are emotional triggers like, I shouldn't be feeling this way, or why am I feeling this way? I should be able to handle this. Or maybe triggers with your kids or your spouses, or triggering because you have different types of work demands now. You're working in a virtual environment, which is far different than working in a face-to-face office setting, for example. Or maybe triggers with like politics and things like that, how leaders are handling this. And there's all sorts of different triggers that can come up. And in order to create that space, it's really beneficial to stop and to take that pause. It's like a sacred pause. And it's the most crucial thing you can do, because it allows a space for these emotions to start being processed. Because oftentimes when we have pain, like a trigger, a painful trigger, and then we apply resistance to it, we begin to suffer. And you'll hear that in contemplative spaces, that pain times resistance equals suffering. So this idea of bringing attention to it is just creating the space for it to exist, allowing it, accepting, recognizing, and allowing it. And then you have this idea of reframing. So once you're able to stop, you can start to reframe. And I like to ask myself, I'm somebody who's dealt a lot in my life with fear and anxiety and things like that. And so a trigger will come up like, oh, and I've been thinking lately, oh, my financial situation. I'm very responsible person, and I want to be very responsible for my family. And my husband right now is not working because he's a freelance designer, and you can imagine that's like all but dried up. So I'm always have these triggers of, oh my gosh, I have to be financially well in order to provide for my family. So it'll automatically bring up feelings of fear in my body. And then this reframing aspect is, what does this emotion actually need from me? And what are the other ways in which I can see this perspective? So can I see this as an opportunity to offer myself compassion in this situation? Or can I see this as an opportunity for me to practice my mindfulness skills, and to practice being a present parent, and to practice knowing that I am safe, and in this moment I am okay? And so this idea of reframing is starting to look at the trigger and look at the situation from another vantage point. And you can, this difficult time is giving rise to all sorts of emotional triggers. And so a really common practice is to practice compassion for what's coming up for you. And that's a really positive reframe, that you can take this time to actually cultivate self-compassion. And then the last step is acceptance. So once we've brought the attention and we've done a bit of reframing and investigation, we can then accept. And I like to think of acceptance as, it's a very difficult step, but it's as if you are as expansive as the sky, and the sky is all the time producing different weather patterns, different cloud formations. There's a lot happening in the field of awareness, which you can metaphorically think of as the sky. And so there's so much happening in your awareness, but it's all coming, it's all going, it comes to live and then it comes to pass. And this is the field of acceptance. This is you accepting everything, all of the different modalities and emotions and things that are happening and everything. You are big enough to accept it all. And this time frame here, this could take like a matter from the trigger to the acceptance phase could take seconds, could take years. And so there's really no formula for how this happens. So be really gentle with yourself, right? So a form of acceptance practice is self-compassion. And I talked about it a little bit, but this is Dr. Kristen Neff. She is probably the world's leader in researching self-compassion. She has an autistic son, and that's how she really developed self-compassion for herself. And she says that it has three main components. And so the first is mindfulness, and that's really that inner calm, developing the ability to create the space to choose, right? So you are accepting whatever the present moment is offering for you, and you're with it. You're with it. So mindfulness. And then the second part is common humanity. And oftentimes in heightened situations like this, we can really sense a depth of common humanity. And it's easy to think, what's wrong with me, or what's wrong with this situation, or I should be handling this better, right? Or it's easy to turn against yourself. But in situations like this, it's also easy to recognize the common humanity. We are all in this together. There's nobody who's not having a difficulty with what we're going through right now. Nobody. And frankly, in life, there is nobody who's having who's just having like the easiest time of life, right? That's just not happening. We're all going through our thing. So we're in this together, and you're nothing's wrong with you, right? You're part of something bigger. And then the last step is self-kindness. And this is really whatever, like Monica talked about, all the different emotions, whatever is coming up for you, how can you meet it with a sense of kindness without judgment, right? And just accept whatever is there and meet it with a kind and generous heart. And so we're going to have a chance now to actually practice a bit of self-compassion through a journaling exercise. And so I'd like you to get out a piece of paper or a pen. And if you don't have the ability to actually write right now physically, I think it would be better if you physically wrote, but if you don't, you can use your computer as well. And we're going to do a 5-minute free writing exercise. So this means that you're going to try to keep the pen moving. You're going to try to write continuously without taking the pen off the paper for the next 5 minutes. And you're going to write a letter to yourself. And it's going to be from the perspective of a close friend or mentor. And this can be somebody who's living or not living. It can be anybody that you choose, a close friend or mentor, or somebody that you aspire to be, or even your more wise, experienced self, let's say in 5 to 10 years. So from that perspective, this person knows you well, they understand you, and they really want the best for you. So actually, what would they say to you about the challenges and opportunities that you're currently facing right now? What would they say to you? And I would like you to begin now, and you will have the next 5 minutes, so we'll be keeping track. And then after this, we will break out into groups. So go ahead and start writing for the next 5 minutes about this prompt. All right, taking a moment to wrap up any last words or sentences that you want to complete. Have a few more seconds here. And going ahead, just taking a minute to review what you wrote, and maybe there's a couple words or maybe a line that really resonated with you, and going ahead and circling anything that stands out to you or starring anything that looks important, but taking a moment just to review what you wrote. All right, I'm wrapping that up. And now we're going to have a chance to break out into dyads and groups of 2. And you're going to have a chance to either share a little bit about what you wrote, or if you don't feel comfortable sharing about what you wrote, you can also share just about the process that you went through of writing and what that was like for you. And you'll have 2 minutes each, actually. So really make one person has a chance to share and the other person is listening, and then switching roles after 2 minutes, and you'll be able to self time yourself, but we'll call everybody back after 4 minutes. So Monica is going to break us out into groups.
Here we go. So if you're with us here in the main room, you can have to join the room to get joined into your room. You just let me know timing when I should give them maybe a 2-minute warning.
Just a couple more minutes here. I think we're ready to bring everybody back.
Room's closing.
Welcome back, everybody.
Mhm.
If you want to share anything in the chat, feel free. Any insights that came up? Otherwise, yeah, sure, we can share. Hope you all had some good discussions, and if you want to share, you can put them in the chat. We'll keep going, so we're getting close to our time. So we're going to move on to the last piece. Well, I see Jake was surprised by what he wrote. Yeah, sometimes the journaling is another mindfulness practice, another way to bring up different things coming up. Your partner shared positive feelings about the exercise. Great. Great. Yeah, journaling is another great mindfulness tool. So a lot of things come up that we don't always know, and another way to document certain things. Finding balance for being productive and also at ease. Great. Excellent. I hope that was helpful. Let's go to the last section, because I know we're getting close to our time. And the last piece is the cognitive resilience. So here it's really around shifting our interpretive style from being pessimistic to optimistic, which can be very challenging in times like this, right? Pessimistic is, I am doing something wrong. This is going to be permanent, right? COVID will things will always be like this, or it applies to all areas of my life. I'm never going to adjust to virtual work, or I really want to go back to, I do dancing and, ballroom dancing, and who knows when that we'll be able to do things like that again. And yet the optimistic part is it's temporary. It applies to only certain parts of our circumstances. It's not something that I've done personally wrong, right? We know that for COVID, but we might be making decisions every day that we're like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have touched that, or I should have worn my face mask somewhere. Shifting that style from pessimism into optimism, and really cultivating that optimism in 3 ways. One is just knowing that we have a negativity mindset. Our brain is trained to go negative, right? So if I'm a trainer, if I get responses and evaluations that are 9 of them are positive, but 1's negative, I'm constantly churning on that 1 negative. And that's human nature of the brain. The second piece is what we've been talking about, being aware of what's in the present. And the third is then shifting and transforming that into something different or more positive. So let's do one last mindfulness practice. This is around resilience. And as we're going into this one, really just bring up for yourself, what is a difficult situation that you're in, whether it's right now what we're all facing, it's a common human thing that we're all living in right now, or if there's some other setback that you want to bring to mind. Okay, so as you think of that, get back into your posture, feet on the floor, back straight, taking a deep breath in and out. Taking another deep breath in and out. And bringing to mind the difficult situation, whether it's what we're going through right now or another setback that you might have faced or been facing. Start bringing that up. What's the feeling associated with that? What are some of the details? What's been happening? Who's involved? How do you feel? Bring in some curiosity, but also some kind attention. Checking in on your general mental and emotional condition. What thoughts and emotions might be present? Or is it even hard to access those emotions or thoughts? What kind of emotions are coming up? Is it worrying? Is it planning? Is it ruminating on the past? How do you talk to yourself about those setbacks? I should have known, I should have done something different, or I wish the situation was different. What emotions are coming up? What's underneath that? Underneath those thoughts, and where are those emotions in your body? You just have to scan your body again. Where are those emotions showing up? Scanning your face, your neck, your shoulders, your abdomen. Often when something negative arises, we turn away from it. What is it like to gently sit with the emotion? Like listening to a good friend who might be sharing something difficult. Bring a sense of kindness to the emotion, knowing that whatever shows up has been experienced by many others. Now let's explore the transformation of this. What information might be contained within these emotions? Do they signal a need for support or safety? If a need comes to mind, recognizing that we all need support to grow and flourish. It's okay asking for support. Just noticing if you were talking to a friend who experienced the same setback as you, what would you be saying to him or her? And if you're feeling this is permanent, just anticipating, what could happen afterwards? What could happen after that? Or even after that, knowing that this is a long journey, not a short, just next step. And what values do you hold which you can rely on for direction and strength? Checking in with yourself, what thoughts and emotions are now going on for you? And now let's switch. Think of a situation where you've experienced some sort of success. You've done something well, where you've overcome a setback in the past. Taking a deep breath in and out. Just noticing any images or emotions that are brought up for you. Taking another in-breath and out-breath. Noticing when you are successful, what does it look like? How does it feel? You've been able to address this particular situation with success. What's coming up for you? If you can't see that, even just notice what success in general, what have you done in the past? Where is that coming up? What's coming up in your body? Sometimes in success, we also get carried away by the emotions. So just fully experiencing it in your body without grasping or resisting. Letting them come and letting them go. Taking a deep breath in and out. Taking one final deep breath in and out. And whenever you're ready, you can come on back. Slowly coming back into the space, just noticing that anything that came up for you. And a small little micro practice, the last thing we'll share with you as we finish up today is just one little acceptance micro practice. So as we breathe in, telling yourself, I do my best. And breathing out, I let go of the rest. So with that, we're coming to the end of our resilience webinar. Anybody have any last questions or comments? Anything you'd like to share in the chat about how you're feeling right now? Maybe one word to kind of end. How are you feeling now? Calm or calm. Yeah, great. Calm. A lot of calm. Thankful, relaxed. Gratitude. Grounded. Well, I'm feeling very grateful too, more able to cope, more committed to self-care despite the high need to help others, focused. Wonderful. I want to say thank you to all of you. I really appreciate all of your attendance. We will be sending this out as a recording, and I appreciate being with all of you today. Brittney?
Me as well. Great to see you all. Thanks for sticking in till the end, and we're in this together for sure. And so sending a lot of warm wishes to you and your family and your friends.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.